allows us the freedom. And that is why there's love, is that there's no love without freedom. And so in order to have freedom, we must have love. And in order to have love, we must have freedom. And love only exists in the context between two people, our relationship with God and ourselves. But true love exists within this relationship. And the primary means of extending love is found within the marriage relationship. Right? It can be experienced in one of its most intense forms is in the marriage relationship. And so we have freedom within that relationship because there is love. We have freedom to do good things, and we have freedom to do things that are hurtful towards that person. Some of them are willful, and some of them are not willful. Some of them are embedded in our own attachment histories and our own impulses and reflexes, and some of them are things that we just do very selfishly. And so either way, it's the cost. Freedom in relationships is the cost of love, right? Having love, we have to have freedom. And so love can fluctuate because freedom is present. And without freedom, it's just coercion, and coercion isn't love at all. So this is the cost that we have for love, is that we can choose poorly. And so we think about Gottman's work in the Marital House. Gottman really is what he's establishing is what he considers to be the most healthy things about relationships. What does it look like to be in a healthy relationship? This is a really nice framework. He's primarily a researcher, which he has translated his research into an actual theory. But his theory is probably not as robust as some of the things that we have talking about in this class. His research is robust, but his theory is not as robust as his research. And so what happened with Gottman stuff, people have gathered Gottman's research material to affirm the work that they're doing in other theories. This overlap, right, where the research meets other approaches to therapy. And like Sue Johnson and John Gottman are very good friends, and they kayak together up in Ottawa once a year. And so Sue Johnson pulled a lot from Gottman's research, and there is a nice overlap between what he's discovered and what is being discovered in some of the more robust theories that are out there. So could you use this therapeutically? Yes, but be a lot more educational driven. This theory is much more of a top-down theory, and so it really drives the component of educating the couple. And as we've talked in this class, I think I've said this enough times, but I'll say it again, that we also are in a different place of distress relationally, and those couples that are more distressed are probably less likely to benefit from theories that are more top-down. Right? And that, honestly, couples that really do well are not ones that follow a formula. Their attachment needs are met. They don't follow a formula. Like, I don't have to do soft starts anymore. If I'm in a certain level of distress, I might want to return to some of those things that are helpful, but I don't need to say, I feel when you in my marriage, right? Because there's enough safety and there's enough attachment needs being met that's me not doing that isn't symbolic of something else. Does that make sense? And so I have a little bit more freedom not to have to follow a formula in my marriage because there's security within my marriage. And so that's the way it should be, right? We shouldn't have this sort of just this formulaic thing that we follow and we check off all these boxes, marriage will go well, because then it just feels like a heck of a lot of hard work, right? And then what if you don't have that knowledge and are you doomed? Which isn't fair when you consider we live in this world that not everyone has the same access to this knowledge. And so people who don't have access to this knowledge can still live in loving, intimate relationships because it's written on their heart, what they are longing for. It's not something they have to learn. It makes sense? But the learning can complement what is already written on our hearts. So I would say, from my perspective, and you can jump in if you want to, from my perspective, this suits people who are not heavily distressed, but are hitting road bumps in the relationship, maybe premarital stuff, kind of get them going before they get going on some ideas of what might be helpful for them. It's just educational information that they can tuck away and use as needed. But for couples that come in that are really toxic relationships and are really heavily distressed, this will actually generate more shame than it will generate relief, because they will have a very difficult time following these steps, because they will go back to their own implicit impulses that are driven by survival needs. Okay, make sense? You have it? Anything you want to add to that? Okay. All right, good. So the sound marital house. All right. So we know about the 70s. Right? Divorce rate was over 50%. Do you guys know what the divorce rate is now? It's over 50%. It hasn't changed a whole lot at all. It's still about exactly the same. Couples therapy at the time was producing that 35%, 33, 35%. And there were only about 200 published studies on divorce. There wasn't a lot going on in the 1970s. So there was a real interest in producing some more rigorous research on couples. And this was one of them that was out there. Did you guys see this in your chapter? That Bentley in 1980 reported that clothes had an impact, that conscious women, clothes conscious women were less likely to divorce. Like, if we're relying on that research, just go shopping, right? Shopping therapy will take care of your marriage. So, correlational studies, I thought that was really funny. Okay, so couples counselors were limited in their ability to identify what works because they didn't have the research to support what works and what doesn't. And they were using individual models to apply to couples therapy, so there was really not a lot of good stuff. So John Gottman and Robert Levinson, they set out to do this work in these love labs of doing research. So they set up love labs and wanted to see what works and what causes divorce. And they were pretty heavily funded too. So the love lab, so this is what they use to measure these couples. And I'll give you a little video describing the love lab. So basically they were looking at their interactive behaviors. So they put them in this love lab and they watched them interact with each other. And they code these partners' interactions. So they made what happened between the couple very quantitative and measurable. They took perceptions, they were assessing self and partner through questionnaires and interviews. And then they did physiology, so they actually hooked them up to endocrine and immune system responses to measure what was going on internally for them as they're interacting with each other, okay? Because you know that you can't necessarily see what's going on, the invisible part of what's going on within the client is just as important as the visible, especially when it comes to attachment and attachment responses. So especially the avoidant individuals are very good at being invisible internally. And so this would pick up a lot of those avoidant individuals. Okay. So couples are asked to spend 24 hours in this love lab. They were asked to do what they would normally do while the researchers watch, which is kind of funny, right? You're in this love lab, you're being good for 24 hours, and you're hooked up to a bunch of stuff. And now they say, go ahead and do what you would normally do. Which I don't, right? There's got to be some sort of influence in that. But so they monitor their heart rate, their sweat glands, their fidgeting. They use a jiggleometer to measure their fidgeting. I need one of those for you guys in class, jiggleometer. I'll call the person with the highest jiggleometer ratings. Urinary stress hormones. So right, kind of like, so pee in this cup while you're here acting normal. Couples will talk about their day and topics that had been difficult for them to get through. And the couples were coded based on facial expressions, voice tones, gestures, body positions, movements, and the distance between them, and so on and so forth. So they were really they were studying everything that they could imagine to see if there was some common elements for those that divorced versus those that stayed together over long term. So this is a longitudinal study that they did. Okay, so here's a little introduction to the love lab. Let me go get my iPad.
This is where couples, happy and not so happy, come to put their marriage under the microscope. This is where the analysis begins, right here at the Love Lab. In his lab in Seattle at the University of Washington, Dr. Gottmen has used his observations to create reality-based advice for couples. After 30 years and thousands of couples, Gottmen has been able to pinpoint behavior between husbands and wives that can ultimately drive two people apart. The lab experience takes several hours. Couples first complete questionnaires separately about their marriage. Partners are asked about current problems like disagreements about finances or how to raise the kids. Couples meet with a researcher to complete what's known as an oral history interview. In the oral history interview, couples are asked to share the story of how they met. It turns out that couples who share a lot of warm and affectionate memories of how they met are the ones who are especially strong. While the couple's interview is front stage, the research media room is the all-important backstage. The interview is videotaped and coded by highly trained observers. They use the Buhlmann coding system to look for such basic dimensions as fondness and admiration, the degree of connection or negativity. After the interview, couples prepare for a conflict discussion. Research technicians hook up couples to a variety of physical monitors. Their heart rates are measured. They are seated in chairs that can measure fidgeting. We call it the jiggleometer. Even fingers and ears are hooked up, allowing us to measure skin conductance, or sweaty palms, and blood velocity. The technicians connect the monitors carefully so that the signals are clear for data analysis. Our computers track the physiology, while the videotape records facial expressions. When someone's heart rate rises above 95 beats per minute, that is a signal of flooding or being very upset. Partners usually need a 20-minute timeout to calm down enough to be able to listen to one another again. Coders evaluate the tapes here. Specially designed monitors have specific codes related to emotions, expressions of validation and joy, along with what Dr. Gottman terms the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. That includes criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, are all measured and later analyzed to predict the relationship's stability. Afterwards, tapes are archived. Thousands of tapes record decades of studies on couples. Each tape tells a remarkable story. Once Dr. Gottman analyzes the data on a couple, he meets with them in his office to talk over the findings. Dr. Gottman remains an optimist about making marriages work. He has been able to challenge some conventional theories about marriage by listening carefully to couples rather than merely heeding his own intuition. For 20 years, Dr. Gottman was awarded the National Institute of Health's Research Scientist Award. He has written about this research in more than 120 articles and 37 books. Some people will find the mathematics of marriage interesting, as Dr. Gottman does. More will be interested in his New York Times bestseller, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, or his most recent book, The Relationship Cure. His work with his wife, Dr. Julie Schwartz Gottman, has led to the development of a couples therapy and a weekend workshop for couples, all based on scientific principles. How do couples respond after going through Dr. Gottman's Love Lab?
If every couple in the world had the opportunity to go through this lab and they could each correct just one thing in their marriage, everybody would be that much happier. Sometimes it's easier to let things slip and to not concentrate on making the marriage work. And that's what it takes, concentration on making the marriage work. You need to spend the effort and the time to make your marriage happy.
Interesting. Do you need to take the effort and time to make your marriage happy? That.
One thing you learn.
Okay, we're going to do our own love lab really quick. So I need someone to volunteer to come on up. Somebody who is currently experiencing some level of distress in a relationship. Okay, come on up.
Actually, my boyfriend on the way out was like, "Are you really wearing that glass?" Yeah, it's okay.
Starts already. Not even
might know
okay.
that.
Really wearing that to class.
Okay, I'm gonna have you come over here so we can keep this blanket so everyone can see what's going on with you. So we're gonna put you right over here to my right. Okay, so basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure her skin response to measure her internal activation. And so this will be similar to the Love Labs, right? They hook you up. And so we're gonna put one on your index finger and one on this finger. Okay, we're gonna get a baseline, and then we're gonna work up to that baseline. These work a little bit better with lotion. Put lotion on, they're better skin conductors, but we'll see how it goes. Simple tight now.
Does anyone have
Those are gonna fall off.
Yeah.
Is that better? you guys ever seen this done before? Biofeedback?